Hey everyone, please subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. My name's Amberly and I'm 29. Let me take you back to a moment that changed everything. A family dinner that became my last. Don't stare at him like that, my sister-in-law teased with a sly grin. He's just a kid, picking up what he sees from grown-ups. Her 8-year-old son, face smeared with dessert, leaned over the table, spat onto my plate, and muttered, "Mom says you had it coming." Laughter erupted, filling the room like a tidal wave. My dad let out a soft chuckle. Mom shook her head but stayed silent. I sat there, watching the spit dissolve into my mashed potatoes, the clink of forks and knives syncing with the thud of my pulse. That night, they didn't just embarrass me, they made me invisible. Have you ever realized, mid-laugh, that every seat at the table is a monument to your own silence? The roast smoky, buttery scent hung heavy in the air. My brother lifted his glass and toasted, to family who know their role. More laughter followed. I set my fork down gently, as if a sudden move might crack the ground beneath me, and stood. "Leaving already?" Mom asked. "Yeah," I whispered. "Dinner's done." But what I really meant was, the charade is over. Outside, a soft rain began, the kind that soaks you quietly without fanfare. My reflection in the window looked steady, but my hands trembled with heat. Through the glass, I saw them, still eating, still laughing. I used to think family wounds were hidden, but that night they had names, faces, and silverware. By midnight, my phone lit up with a message from Dad, "Don't reach out again." A minute later, my brother reacted with a single smiley emoji. I read it twice, then typed, "Got it. Mortgage autopay stops tomorrow." I pressed send and held my breath for 3 seconds. Nothing. Then the group chat exploded, names flashing like sparks from a fire I'd finally let burn. Thunder rolled outside, late but fierce, and for the first time in years, peace slipped in with the storm. The storm howled like it had been waiting to roar. My phone buzzed relentlessly, messages lighting up the dark. "What's that supposed to mean, Amber? You can't just cut off the payments. Dad says this isn't a joke." My fingers shook, not from guilt but from clarity. For 7 years, I'd quietly paid their mortgage, $1, 300 siphoned from my account to theirs every month. It started when Dad called, voice breaking, begging for help with bank notices. "You're the reliable one, sweetheart," he'd said. "Your brother's got kids to raise. Don't tell him." So I didn't. I just paid, month after month, earning a front row seat to my own humiliation at every family gathering. That night, though, I realized something stark. When you stop funding your own disrespect, it becomes their emergency. The phone buzzed again. "Amber, call me now." "Dad, you're being dramatic." "Mom, you think you can hold money over us?" "My brother." I smiled faintly and typed, not control. "Limits." Then, for the first time, I left the group chat. The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It was pure, like the air after rain. I poured tea and sat by the window, watching streetlights blur through the downpour. A younger me whispered inside, "They'll never get you." Stop hoping they will. By morning, my inbox was flooded. Transfer requests, unknown numbers, even a cousin offering to talk it out. But I'd already decided. I wasn't just stopping the payments. I was dismantling the myth that I was their fallback. I logged into my bank app, canceled the autopay, and moved every penny of my emergency fund to a new account in my name. By noon, the mortgage payment bounced. 5 minutes later, Dad called from my brother's phone. "Amber," he said, voice quivering, "you've made a terrible mistake." I glanced at the sky and murmured, "At last, we agree on something." The next day, the family group chat turned into a battlefield. Screenshots, voice notes, and crocodile tears dressed as worry. "She's ungrateful after all we've done. She's trying to ruin us financially. What will people think when the bank comes?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. What they didn't know was the mortgage wasn't just in their name. It was tied to a trust I'd set up when I helped them refinance, a trust one legally controlled. I remembered that day vividly. Dad at the bank, hands shaking as he signed the papers. "You're our savior, Amber," he'd said, eyes wet. But I knew even then I was saving the house, not them, because they'd never save me. I opened the trust portal. The screen glowed. Lee Family Estate, primary trustee, Amber Lee. I stared not with pride, but with disbelief at how far my silence had carried me. Mom called first, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. Sweetheart, we didn't mean any of it. Your brother's just hot-headed. His son spat in my food, I said evenly. And you laughed. Silence. Then, kids mess up. So do parents, I whispered, hanging up. 5 minutes later, my brother texted. If the house is taken, that's on you. I replied with one line, then start packing. By noon, the mortgage company emailed. Auto draft canceled. Property reassignment in progress. I leaned back, tea in hand, as sunlight cut through the clouds, replacing the rain. It felt like the universe had drawn a boundary between what I gave and what I tolerated. They wanted to show me my place. Now they'd learn theirs. My phone buzzed all evening, missed calls from Mom, Dad, even Pastor Neil, who once preached forgiveness. His voicemail pleaded, Amber, your family's in trouble. They could lose the house. Think it over. Trouble. The word echoed. They hadn't cared when I was sinking. I opened Facebook to see my brother's post. Some people abandon family over money. Sad times. The comments were a parade of hypocrisy. Aunt Mara, stay strong, sweetie. Mom's friend, she'll come around. Family's thicker than pride. I didn't reply. Silence, I'd learned, speaks louder than arguments. At 7:11 p.m., my brother called, voice sharp. You think this is a game? The kids are scared. Mom's crying. I glanced at the trust documents on my laptop. You should have thought of that before teaching your son to shame me. He exhaled sharply. You're destroying this family. No, I said softly. You did that. I'm just unsubscribing. I thought he'd hang up, but he whispered, you'll regret this, and the line went dead. My heart stayed steady. I wasn't angry anymore, I was awake. 2 hours later, the mortgage officer messaged, due to ownership clarification, the Lee residence is frozen for reassessment. No modifications or sales until verified. I smiled. No one could touch it until the truth was settled. A neighbor texted the next morning, your brother's moving furniture out. It's chaos. I stood by the window, sunlight warming my face. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for staying quiet. Sometimes, the silent one holds the deed. By Monday, their drama reached my workplace. I was in a meeting when my assistant whispered, a man's downstairs says he's your brother. I froze, then said calmly, tell him I'm busy indefinitely. But minutes later, the glass door swung open. He stood there, face red, eyes wild, clutching a stack of papers. You think you can shame us like this, he yelled. The room went still. My boss glanced at me, unsure. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and said, security will show you out. He slammed the papers down, foreclosure notices, debt letters, my text screenshots. You're cold, he hissed. I met his gaze. Cold doesn't pay your debts anymore. 2 guards escorted him out as his shouts echoed down the hall. You'll regret this, Amber. When the door closed, my boss cleared his throat. You okay? I gave a faint smile. I am now. That afternoon, alone in the break room, I stared at the rain-streaked window. For 4 years, I'd carried their burdens, fixing their messes while they mocked my missteps. But watching him dragged out, I realized peace is boundaries enforced in plain sight. That evening, Mom texted, you've shamed us enough. Come to dinner. Let's talk like grown-ups. I stared at her words, then replied, grown-ups don't spit in plates, Mom. No response came. Driving home, the streetlights glowed like golden streaks. My small, quiet rented house felt warmer than the mansion I'd once saved. As I brewed tea, the mortgage officer messaged, Ms. Lee, documents finalized. Ownership transferred solely to you. I set the phone down and laughed, a soft, shaky sound I hadn't heard in years. 3 days later, a gold embossed invitation arrived. Family dinner, Sunday, 6 p.m. Let's talk like before. Mom's handwriting, unsteady but intentional. I almost ignored it, but something, maybe closure, maybe curiosity, urged me to go. That Sunday, I drove to the house I'd once saved, now mine. The driveway was packed, my brother's SUV, Dad's old sedan. Laughter spilled from the open window. When I stepped inside, the room froze. Mom stopped mid-step. Dad's smile vanished. My brother looked like he'd seen a ghost. You came, Mom said softly. I own the place, I replied. We sat. No one touched the food. The air was heavy, fragile, like it might shatter. Dad spoke first. You can't keep it, Amber. It's not fair. I looked at him. I paid every bill for 7 years. You told me to stay quiet when they mocked me. Now that silence owns the deed. My brother slammed his fist on the table. You deceived us. No, I said, voice steady, almost gentle. I just read the fine print you never bothered with. The room fell silent, stunned. Even his son, the boy who spat in my plate, stared, confused. I stood, sliding a folder across the table. These are the documents. The house is mine. But don't worry, I'm not evicting anyone tonight. Dad's eyes softened. Then what's your plan? I smiled faintly. I'm selling it. Mom gasped. My brother's jaw clenched. You wouldn't, he whispered. I nodded. The offer's already accepted. Buyers move in next month. The silence wasn't anger, it was realization. They saw I was no longer the daughter pleading for a place at their table. I was the woman who owned it and could sell it if I chose. Mom's fork clattered. You can't sell our home like it's yours. I cut in softly. It was never yours, Mom. You lived here while I paid for the roof. Dad paled. Where will we go? I held his gaze, not cruelly but truthfully. Where I went when you told me not to come back. My brother's voice broke. This is revenge. I shook my head. No, it's closure. You took my silence for weakness, and I let you because peace mattered more than pride. But peace isn't servitude. He leaned forward, veins bulging. So what? You kick us out and live here alone. I smiled. No, I sold it to a young family with a newborn. They'll fill this place with laughter that doesn't hurt. No one spoke. The air grew heavy, raw, ashamed. Mom's eyes teared. After all we did for you. I exhaled. You raised me, and I'm thankful. But you also made my worth feel conditional. Every favor had a cost. I opened my purse, placing 3 envelopes on the table, 1 for each. Your share of the sale, I said. Fair split after the mortgage. My brother snatched his. What's this? Freedom, I said softly. Dad looked up, voice shaking. Amber, where will you go? I smiled. Home. They didn't grasp that home wasn't a place anymore. It was me, no longer begging to belong. As I walked to the door, my nephew tugged my sleeve. Aunt Amber, Mom says you hate us. I knelt, meeting his eyes. No, honey. I just stopped letting people hurt me. He nodded, quiet, confused, but listening. Maybe the cycle could break. At dawn, moving trucks pulled away. I stood by the gate, watching strangers carry boxes through what was once our door, now theirs. The house seemed smaller, as if the years of tension had been swept out with the furniture. I felt no guilt, only relief. The sale closed cleanly. After taxes and fees, my share was $148,000, not just money, but closure with a number. That afternoon, I drove 3 hours north, past city lights, to a coastal town where my name meant nothing. The ocean gleamed like molten silver, vast and gentle. I rented a small cafe space by the pier, smelling of espresso, vanilla, and fresh starts. When the lawyer called to confirm the final transfer, he asked if I wanted to rename the trust. Yes, I said. Call it Peace and Coffee. He chuckled. That's poetic. It's honest, I replied. A week later, I opened the cafe. People came, tourists, locals, quiet souls reading by the window. I didn't share my story. I didn't need to. Every cup I poured was a quiet defiance of the girl who once waited for permission to exist. One evening, as the sun sank into the horizon, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. We're staying with your aunt. Hope you're okay. Take care. I replied, I am. Truly. Then I set the phone down and watched the waves crash in steady silence. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's the sound of peace filling a cup, one breath at a time. My nephew's face lingered in my mind, soft and uncertain. Maybe one day he'd visit, order a latte, and see what strength really looks like. Until then, I keep building a life where no one spits in my plate, because I finally learned to serve myself.